The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, he'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to East Hertfordshire once again, people. Now, in this episode, you might hear a bit of road noise in the background because this one lies close to the A10, but it's not actually on the A10. You have to go through Buntingford to get into the village. You can't access it directly from that road. Once you get here, you'll find this immaculate, lovely village green where cricket is played. This is Aspenden. Aspenden, Aspen Tree Valley. Today in East Hertfordshire we come to the smallest one we've done out here so far. This is Aspenden, which sits just to the south of Buntingford and a major road, the A10 Buntingford bypass. Despite that fact, you can't actually access the village from the A10, you have to go through Buntingford instead. The prime meridian passes just to the east of here. The name Aspenden is very simple, it just means Valley of Aspen Trees, and it was first attested in 1212. Aspenden has a modest number of landmarks for us to see, but the ones that are here are quite cool. You can't cover this village without a mention of cricket. Now, it might not be a major sport in Hertfordshire, and yes, I say that despite knowing they have a minor county side, but in this village it's been played for a long time. In fact, it's become something of an Aspenden institution. It's played on the village green at the eastern end of civilization, within sight of the A10 flyover. At the other end of the village is the church, which stands on a piece of land that belongs to Aspenden Hall. Once a country house, it now houses grain dryers after it was gutted in 1963 for farm use. It still has its parkland and ponds and all the rest of that associated stuff though. In the church is a monument to the Freeman brothers, Ralph and William, who are depicted holding hands. There's a lot to thank those brothers for in this village. Here we'll learn about them and their influence on a tiny place that loves the crack of leather on willow. Let's go. We start at the A10 flyover located at the eastern entrance to the village from Buntingford. This is the first time we've seen the A10 on TVI, and I can assure you it won't be the last. Ironically, given it passes so close to Aspenden, the village is inaccessible directly from it. This stretch is the Buntingford bypass and it opened in June 1987. Before it existed, traffic had to, instead, travel along Buntingford High Street, which was chosen for the county's first town centre enhancement scheme. The A10 is one of two routes that connect London and Cambridge, the other being the M11. The A10 was originally part of the Roman Ermine Street, which ran from London to York. Buntingford's High Street continues to follow the line of Ermine Street today. It's always been a busy long-distance route, and for centuries Buntingford has welcomed the trade from passing traffic. That's the town though. Aspenden has never been on the route of the road and has remained generally well out of the way of traffic. Obviously, you can't help but hear the noise of the A10 here, and it soundtracked my way across this field. What we're doing here is walking to the other end of the village so that we can form a neat circle to end up back at the village green. This path takes you to the church. not the easiest bridle way to try and walk on that. It's uphill to start with, and then you come to a very sort of narrow section that's very muddy underfoot, or at least it is this time of year, and then you've got to come down it on the other side. So it's definitely not an easy path to try and walk on. But we have made it. We're at the road, as you can see, and now we're going to head towards the church. Now this is a dead end, and the church is just before the actual dead end. You can't go much further because the church stands on a piece of land that belongs to Aspenden Hall. We'll have a look at that if we can. To the church then. St Mary's Church has been here for quite a while. Indeed, the Domesday Book records a priest in Aspenden in 1086, and there are traces of Saxon workmanship in the north wall of this church's nave. It's possible that a place of worship has been on this very site since around 950 AD. Much of the existing building was built in around 1350, and the church was restored between 1500 and 1505 by Sir Robert Clifford. It has a monument within it to the Freeman brothers, Ralph and William, who are depicted holding hands. Ralph was a prominent 17th century parliamentarian and the builder of Aspenden Hall. St Mary's Church stands proud over the village on a small hill at the end of the main street. The land adjoins Aspenden Hall, and the history of that building is intertwined with that of the church. St Mary's offers a traditional style of worship. The Buntingford Journal and the church notice board provide a list of current services. The church has a choir, a peal of bells with an active team of ringers, and a family service on the first Sunday of every month. The war memorial should also be noted here too. There are 22 names on it, 21 from World War I and 1 from World War II. Aspenden Hall was first mentioned in a survey dated 1556, several years before the Freeman brothers acquired the manor. That means at some point the house was rebuilt. The Freeman family would make several improvements to the house and its gardens over the next 2 centuries. By the early 19th century, the house was no longer a family home and was in use as a school. It remained that way for 11 years until in 1856 it was demolished and replaced with a smaller building for Sir Henry Lushington. It was used again as a country house, but according to Historic England, it now houses grain dryers after it was gutted in 1963 for farm use. Surely that's a first then for TVI, a Grade 2 listed building with parkland and ponds and all the rest of it that's now in agricultural use. The mind boggles sometimes. Aspenden Hall was originally called Aspenden Lodge. Confusingly, there's another more modern building nearby that's got its old name. It's this house on your screens now. Let me tell you folks, walking up to the church and to Aspenden Hall is no easy task. It's uphill, and it's not a shallow hill either. You know how I have mentioned before in previous episodes that churches are always built on the tallest piece of land? Yeah, here in Aspenden that's definitely the case. I'm glad that I'm actually back downhill now and heading towards the pub. There is one pub here in Aspenden, and it's called the Fox, and that's next to sea. Aspenden is otherwise very residential generally, but there is a pub here. That would be the Fox, currently owned by a Mr. Graham Heasman. It's a Grade 2 listed building and has been on the National Heritage List for England since 1967. The history of the Fox goes back to the 17th century when the building was erected. It was at first a pair of cottages, and it remained so until 1871. In that year, Simpson's Brewery bought the two buildings, combined them together and opened the pub. The Fox has been the only public house in Aspenden since the end of World War I. A traditional English pub with a large beer garden, an open fire in the winter, quality cask ales and delicious home-cooked food, it's renowned for its annual beer festival. We've only really got the village green to go now. Before we get to that, let's chuck in a mention of Seth Ward. Born in Aspenden in 1617, he was a mathematician, an astronomer, a bishop, and one of the founding members of the Royal Society. In 1684, he erected and endowed a hospital in Buntingford, a building that serves today as an almshouse. Okay, we've made it back to the other end of the village. The A10 flyover is literally just a few steps that way. I found the parish notice board on the edge of the green, and you know what that means by now. One of these things is going to be displayed upon it momentarily. Not a magnetic board, this one, unfortunately. But nonetheless, it's job done. It's a little hard to believe, but not much is known about the origin of this beautiful village green. It is known quite widely it was common land and was often used for grazing cattle. It ceased to be so in 1960 after the law required it to be registered. Cricket has been played on the green for a long time. The sport, not a popular one in general in Hertfordshire, is something of an Aspenden institution. The original cricket pavilion was built in 1910, but that was replaced with a more substantial construction in the late 1960s. The team that play here are Aspenden, Standon and Puckridge Cricket Club. They were formed after a merger of two former clubs in 2001, Aspenden and Standon and Puckridge. Known as ASPS, they are members of the Hertfordshire and Essex League. Since their formation, the club has done really well. They were promoted from Division 5 to Division 4 in 2003, just 2 seasons after forming. By 2012, they climbed as high as Division 2. There can be no denying that any video about Aspenden is incomplete without a mention of cricket. It's what this small, out-of-the-way village in rural Hertfordshire lives for. Now, of course, it's the wrong time of year for cricket. It's November, it's a summertime thing, but you can just imagine it, can't you, being sat on one of these benches around the edge of the village green and enjoying the sound of leather on willow. Now, if you sit on this particular bench, you're actually in the best seat in the house, literally, because as you can see here, this says this is the best seat in the house because it's in memory of a man called Roy House who died in 2019. So yeah, if you're ever this way on and you're in Aspenden, take a perch on this bench if there's a cricket match on and just enjoy the sport, I suppose. Time for us to move on though to the next village. We're done with this one, and yeah, let's see if the next one is just as good as this. And for us, that's the end of the over. Back in the car, we're now off to make our way over the boundary to the last parish in this first East Hertfordshire run. The last one sees us head towards a place that used to have a station and still has a house with an unusual memorial on a piece of grass outside it. See you there, folks. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.